What is up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and in this video I want to show you guys a couple of test hands with the Dogmatika control deck. And now this deck can be extremely fun and satisfying to play, but if you're misplaying, it's very difficult to win games. And so in this video I just want to show you guys a couple of plays, show you guys how the deck works, and then how you can avoid some common mistakes, and also how you can use White Knight to really disrupt your opponent's plays, because it's very important to know what you can send out of your opponent's extra deck as well as with your own in order to have the highest impact within a game. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you want to see the deck profile, links in the description, but let's get it. Alright, so I've already power shuffled, but I'm just going to do a couple of rifle shuffles really quick to further randomize the deck. Do a final cut. Now let's get started with the first hand. Oop, upside down. So we've got Veiler, Triple Tack, Cross Out, Ecclesia, and then Imperm. And so this hand is actually very difficult to kind of play through because we don't have really that many starters. We've only got the one copy of Ecclesia, but we do already have two forms of disruption, and then we do know that our plays are going to go through because we have the Cross Out and the Triple Tack. And so really all you can do with a single copy of Ecclesia is to just summon it and then search a punishment, which is kind of boring. But if you're feeling especially spicy, especially considering that we do have the Triple Tack and the Cross Out, something else you could do is to normal summon the Veiler and then go Veiler into All Mirage, link All Mirage into Secure Gardna, and now you can special summon Ecclesia, and instead of searching punishment, you can get to your Maximus, and then Maximus can get us to a lot more. So let's add Maximus to our hand. This is the hand down here, by the way. Just trying to get everything in the frame as much as I can. But we can banish the All Mirage from the graveyard, summon out Maximus, and then activate Maximus's effect. And this can get us to our Shaddoll engine, which can lock our opponent out of the game. And so we can use Maximus, and we can dump Apkalone, and then we can also dump, let's say, Titanclad. So now Apkalone triggers. We can use Apkalone to add a copy of Schism from deck to hand, and then we can discard the Triple Tactics Talents, because if our opponent had hand traps, then we could use this, but it's hard to say in a blind test hand. So dump the Triple Tack, and then we can just set our Schism, our Imperm, and probably the Cross Out too. And then pass turn. On the opponent's turn, the Schism can get us to a window, and then it's going to be very difficult for a lot of decks like Tri-Brigade or Sword Soul to play through this type of board, especially because we can back the window up with an Imperm, and then also can't forget that rookie mistake, and the in-phase Titanclad can get us a floor. And so we've got two forms of effect negation. We've also got the window, and then we've got the Cross Out for our opponent's droplets if they have that, or if they have tried to Imperm it, again, Cross Out for that too. So most decks are not playing through this. This is pretty much game, because on the next turn you can just summon your floor and then use Maximus's effect. That gets you to more damage, and this can just be game. Window can't attack directly, but it's still 3,000, 2,000, 2,000, and 1,000. That's 8,000 damage. So if your opponent has nothing on the board, you can just attack directly. If they do have something, you can use Maximus, dump Intis, pop whatever they have, and then again, that can be game. And so while the hand was very meh, you can definitely see how you can win games with it. The only thing you do want to keep in mind with the play we made is that it is vulnerable to nib, which is why I play it, as you saw in the deck profile. Well, not why I play, but one of the reasons why I play it is because it allows us to cross it out. Because we summon Veiler, All Mirage, Secure, Ecclesia, Maximus. So that's 5 summons. We could have got nibbed, and that would hurt quite bad, because it would mean that floor is useless. With that, instead, we could just search another Ecclesia, but it still hurts. We still would have the window, but we would lose the Maximus, and pretty much just the board presence. So it's nice to know that we at least could have the cross out for that if we needed it, if you decided that it were necessary. So let's go ahead and move on to the next hand. Alright, so moving on to the next hand. Let's see what we get here. So we've got Floor, White Knight, Imperm, second White Knight, and then Nadir Servant. So it kind of stinks that we opened up two of our copies of White Knight because they pretty much don't do anything until you get the ritual spell, but it is nice to have it in general, especially considering that we do have Nadir Servant. The other bad thing is with the White Knight also drawing the Floor, because summoning White Knight gets us to like Floor usually, but we can kind of play around that a little bit. The spooky thing about this hand is that Nadir Servant has to resolve, otherwise we pretty much have nothing, just the Imperm, and so you probably lose if they have Ash. But the good thing is that the Nadir Servant does give us a ton of options, the first of which just being a standard Dogmatika into the Shaddoll engine play. So we can start by just activating our copy of Nadir Servant, sending Apkalone to the graveyard, searching a copy of Ecclesia to our hand. Then we can activate the Apkalone's effect, and we can add a copy of Schism to our hand, and then just discard it. Next, we can summon our Ecclesia, use Ecclesia to search Maximus, we can banish the Apkalone from our graveyard to summon out Maximus, activate Maximus's effect. That can send, let's see, Ash Dragon and not Blossom. Ash Dragon and Construct to the grave, or you can send the second Winda, either one works, because we're just going to use the graveyard effect to add the Schism back to our hand. And so now we can just set our Imperm and our Schism, and this is going to give us multiple forms of disruption. So during the end phase we can use Ash Dragon to search a copy of Ecclesia for our next turn. And then on board we're going to have Imperm, Schism, Ecclesia, Maximus, and then the Schism is live because we have a Shaddoll and a Dark Monster. So we had the Winda, not Winda, but the Construct and the Ash Dragon. We could have also sent Winda, which would also work, but you just need one of them in the graveyard. And then we have the Imperm plus the Floor in hand. So you've got two forms of effect negation and a floodgate pretty much. So that's pretty good. And then on our next turn, we can just like change everything to attack, summon these, and that's game. Another cool play that you can do with this hand can be, once again, starting with the Nadir Servant and then going for a Maximus play. But, well, you send first. So send Apkalone to the grave, search Ecclesia. We can use Apkalone's effect to, instead of dumping the Schism, we can dump a Beast instead. And this can be useful if, let's say, you're going second and you sided out Schism, or let's say you're going against a deck that Winda isn't that good against. This play can be pretty solid. And so dump the Apkalone, then use Apkalone's effect to search a Beast. Then we can discard the Beast, and that gets us to a draw. Droplets, and then from here we can go Ecclesia. Also, maybe this doesn't work going second, obviously, but similarly Ecclesia can go for Maximus, summon the Maximus by banishing the Apkalone in the graveyard, and now from here we can use Maximus's effect, and we can send a copy of Herald of the Arclight, and then a Blossom to the graveyard. And then with that, we can make it, let's say, chain link 1 Blossom, chain link 2 Arclight. So then Arclight can search Calamity, and then Blossom will draw us a card once that chain resolves. Second Droplets. And then we can put back the White Knight on the bottom. Now we can activate Dogmatic Calamity, using that to send Titanclad to the grave. Then we can summon our White Knight. And from here, we could just set Imperm, set droplets, in phase, search a second copy of Ecclesia. And then we'd be ending our turn with Knight, Imperm, droplets, and floor. So 4 forms of interaction. Plus we have follow-up for next turn. So that's a pretty cool play as well. Alright, so for this hand we've got Imperm, Diviner, Ecclesia, Punishment, and Called By. So this is a pretty solid hand. Diviner plus Ecclesia is obviously a really good play. And so what we can do with this is start by normal summoning Diviner, using Diviner's effect to send a copy of, where is it? Herald of the Arclight to the graveyard. And then we can use Herald to add one of our ritual cards to our hand. Typically, I like to get Knight, just because if you somehow end up with the droplets and then your opponent tries to use something, you can activate droplets and your opponent can't chain monster effects. But I guess in that same regard, you could just get Dogmatic Calamity and then they can't chain spells. Which, you know, I guess it works either way. But you just gotta pick your poison. But let's just search White Knight in this case. So then from there, what we can do is link away the Diviner into a copy of All Mirage, and then the All Mirage into a Secure Gardener. Now we can special summon Ecclesia, use Ecclesia's effect, and that can get us to a Maximus. And now we could just use this to search like the ritual spell, but I think Maximus is a lot better because it does the exact same thing, as well as getting a couple of sins to the graveyard as well. So let's get Maximus. So now from here we can just banish our All Mirage from the grave, special summon Maximus, and then activate Maximus's effect. And with this we have a couple of options, because we could dump an Apkalone, search Schism, and then go from there. Schism can be very powerful for locking opponents out the game, but we don't have to rely on the Shaddoll engine in this deck. And I think with this hand I kind of want to show you what you can do without the Shaddoll engine. And so what we could do instead is activate Maximus's effect. And then with that, let's dump Herald of the Arclight, because that's going to get us to Dogmatic Calamity. But then let's also dump a copy of... let's dump a copy of Blossom. Let's see where that gets us. Or actually, instead of Blossom, we could just dump Apkalone and then send Beast. And so with that, our effect's going to trigger. Chain links don't necessarily matter, just put whichever one you wouldn't mind getting negated at chain link 2. So let's say Apkalone at chain link 2, because it would be really nice for Herald to resolve. And so with that we can in Apkalone chain link 2, so Apkalone will add Beast to our hand and then discard it. Chain link 1, Herald can search Dogmatic Calamity, separate chain, Beast resolves, draw a card. Floor, that kind of stinks because we were going to search one anyways, but it's more disruption. Then from here we can activate Dogmatic Calamity, summon our Knight, and then dump. Since we already have floor, sending Ash Dragon doesn't do as much. It gets us a follow-up for next turn, but you could, it's definitely debatable dumping in Omega, because Omega allows you to shuffle things back into your extra deck so that you can reuse them. But let's go with Ash. Why not? Let's get the follow-up. So send Titan to the graveyard, and then set our spell and traps. And so we'd be ending with Called By, Punishment, Imperm. So 1, 2, maybe 3 forms of disruption here, plus the White Knight, plus the floor, and then in the end phase we'd search for another Ecclesia. So we kind of have 5 forms of disruption depending on what we're playing against. The called by maybe is, maybe isn't, but at least 4 between the Fleur de Lis, Imperm, Punishment, White Knight. So it'd be very difficult for a lot of decks to play through that. And what you use White Knight for just depends on the matchup. And so if you're playing against birds, for example, you could send Recital Starling to the grave. That takes away a search and F0. You could take away their Zeus. That keeps them from clearing your board. And you can take away either Access Code or Omen. That way they can't, again, break your board. So all of those are good options against the bird deck. If you're playing against like Sword Soul, for example, you could have them send like Baxia to the grave. That's very tough to deal with. Or not tough to deal with, but it clears a lot of cards. It forces disruption. So sending that can be good because it's both an extender and a like a board breaker for them. If they only play one, of course. But you could also send like a Baron. If they always play one of those. You could send Yazi. Yazi's really good. It really just depends, and you can tell what you should be sending based off of what they're starting with. So like if they're starting with like Mo Yi, you know they're going to be summoning an 8. And so with that, you can just get rid of some of their 8s. If you're starting with like a Long Young, you know they're going for, 10. But you generally get the gist of it. Once you see what play they're going for, you can start picking that play apart. So let's move on to the next hand. So for this hand, we've got Ecclesia, Dogmatic Calamity, Diviner, Droplets, and Imperm. So it's a pretty similar hand in that we've got Diviner plus Ecclesia. That's a big wombo combo, more or less. And so, same thing as before. We can start with Diviner, summon that, send Herald to the grave, search the missing part of our combo. So dump Herald, search our copy of White Knight, and now a cool thing about having your ritual cards early on is that you can go into, like, you can summon it early, and then if your opponent tries to hand trap you later, you can trigger the effect on your own turn as well. So that's often pretty useful. The other cool thing about this hand is that if our opponent had a hand trap and they tried to stop the Diviner, we could still just go into like Almirage, summon the Ecclesia, and then keep playing from there. One thing that I forgot to mention was that there is one small conflict between White Knight and the Shaddoll engine, being that if you have White Knight on the board, you can't summon your Shaddoll cards. But one way to get around that actually is Droplets, because what you can do is use Knight as disruption, and then once your opponent tries to do, if they try to do anything else, you can just use Droplets as a form of interactions by sending White Knight to the graveyard. So you get the White Knight disruption, then you get the Droplets disruption, then you can summon out the window. And so again, what I would do with this hand is link away the Diviner into Almirage, link Almirage away into Secure Gardener, activate Dogmatic Calamity, because this locks us out of the extra deck for the rest of the turn, so you don't want to summon the White Knight first. Dogmatic Calamity, summon out your White Knight, dump your Titanclad to the grave. Now if the opponent has a hand trap for the Ecclesia, you would get this effect, so that's pretty cool. But we could special summon the Ecclesia. Ecclesia effect get us to a Maximus. Special summon the Ecclesia by not the Ecclesia, but the Maximus by banishing the Almirage. And then we can activate Maximus's effect. Then with this we can dump Apkalone and then a copy of, let's see, so we already got Ash Dragon in the grave, so no need to send that. Something else that would be cool to send is Herald. That can search as a card that we can discard off of the Apkalone, so that we wouldn't have to like discard the Imperm. We could also send Blossom if we wanted to get an extra card just to dig through our deck and see what else we get, but I think the Herald's probably the best choice. So dump Herald Apkalone. We want the Herald to be at Chain Link 2 so that it resolves first, so we have that extra card to discard. So resolve the Herald. We can search a copy of White Knight. I like searching White Knight here because Nadir's Servant can get it back from the graveyard. So search the White Knight, and then resolve the Apkalone to search Schism. And then discard the Knight. Shuffle deck a little bit. So then on our opponent's turn, we are going to have, before that, in phase, search a Fleur de Lis. And so now on the opponent's turn, we're going to have a White Knight, a Floor, Imperm, Schism, Droplet. So this is already 1, 2, 3, 4 disruptions, and then plus the Schism, which can just lock them out of the game. So you've got White Knight, which is already nuts, but then after that, they activate a monster effect on the field. We can just use Droplets, send this to the graveyard, and then Schism's going to be live. And again, it's the Droplets that allows you to get around the restriction on White Knight, which again keeps you from using Schism in most cases. Alright, so let's do 1 or 2 more hands. Let's see what we get. As you guys can see, every single hand has been playable. This deck is actually extremely consistent. The Dogmatika engine is, it's just so consistent. So let's go ahead and look at this hand. This is probably going to be the brick, but let's hope not. We've got Sanctum, Servant, Diviner, Second Sanctum, and Ecclesia. This is kind of broken. This is kind of an insane hand. And so what I like most about this hand is just the number of offensive options that we have. So we've got the Ecclesia, we've got the Diviner, we've got the Servant. We can pretty much do whatever we want with this hand, and I love that. And on top of it, we have the 2 copies of Sanctum too, so we can do whatever we want defensively as well. We're skipping 2 of our opponent's turns. That is nuts. And so what I think I would do with this hand actually is I would hold the Diviner because we don't need it in this hand. However, what we can do instead is use it to break our opponent's board next turn. And so what I would do is start by just using the Nadir Servant. And then with the Nadir Servant, I would send Herald to the graveyard. Also, the thing with this is if the Nadir Servant gets negated, you still have a play because we have Diviner plus Ecclesia. But I would send the Arclight to the grave, use that to search a copy of Knight, and then use Herald's effect to search a copy of the Dogmatic Calamity. Then activate Dogmatic Calamity to summon Knight, and then dump Ash Dragon to the graveyard. Again, now from here, if our opponent has a hand trap, it's going to trigger our Knight, which is pretty awesome. Now we can normal summon our Ecclesia, activate Ecclesia's effect, and just go for a punishment, safe, easy engine card. So that's very useful. And then, or I guess something else we could do instead is go for Maximus, and then Maximus could be pretty nuts to it. I think I actually like Maximus more because we don't really need more interaction. We have Scythe. So instead of going Ecclesia for punishment, let's go Ecclesia for Maximus. And we can summon Maximus by just banishing the Herald of the Arclight. So we still got these in the grave. So now with Maximus's effect, we can send Apkalone and where is it? Blossom. And this is going to get us to 2 more cards. So let's do Blossom Chainlink 1, Apkalone Chainlink 2. That way it thins the deck out a little bit. So let's see. Search the Beast, discard the Beast, and then the Blossom. Also, the cool thing is what you put on the bottom of the deck, you're definitely not gonna draw with the Beast. So drew cross out, not bad, but we obviously don't need it at this point, so we can just put this back on the bottom, and then separate chain Beast effect, draw a floor. Solid. That means we could just use our Ash Dragon in the in phase to search for us another Ecclesia. So now we can just set our Sanctum, in phase, search Ecclesia, And then we've still got Knight plus Floor, so 2 forms of disruption. We also have the Sanctum for Scythe, which is huge. And then next turn, we've got Ecclesia plus Diviner. So this is just going to dump Intis, break like a back row that they have. Ecclesia is just something else we can push with. We're also going to have the Scythe, which is 2200 of beefy power. So it'll be pretty easy to go for game next turn, most likely, because they're not playing. And again, if you're playing against a deck like, let's say, Sword Soul, if they can't summon from the extra deck, there is not very much they can do. So GG. Same with Lyralist Tribegate. If they can't summon from the extra deck, they are likely passing turn. And both of those decks also play very few hand traps. And so we'd be able to just continue going off. So let's do one more. So I don't want this video to be too long. It's probably already going to be quite long. But let's see. So final test hand. Please no brick. Droplet, Dogmatic Calamity, Droplet, Ecclesia, alright. And then, oh, okay, Nadir Servant, so good hand. For this hand, I'd make a probably pretty similar play to the last one. I would just probably go for a Winda play, just to guarantee we've got a Floodgate on the opponent's turn. And so we can start with the... You could start with Nadir Servant. Another option would be starting with Ecclesia, just to ensure that you get the White Knight out early. You could also use Nadir Servant to get out White Knight, and then Ecclesia to get Maximus. Either way kind of works though. Yeah, I like that play. So let's just go Nadir Servant. Use Nadir Servant to dump Herald to the grave. That can search us our copy of White Knight. And then Herald can search us a second copy of White Knight, or... Yeah, let's do the second copy. No. Let's do Calamity. That way we keep an unknown in hand. Then from here we activate Calamity, summoning the Knight. Ash Dragon to the grave. Now from here we can summon out our Ecclesia, use Ecclesia's effect to search Maximus. Summon Maximus by banishing our Arclight. So then we can use Maximus's effect, and let's go ahead and dump Apkalone Herald. Herald can search as something to discard for the Apkalone. So we can make Apkalone Chainlink 1, Herald Chainlink 2. This also chain blocks the Apkalone. And so with that, we can search a copy of White Knight that we have within the deck. Next, Apkalone. That can get us to Schism. And then discard the White Knight. And then from here, we can set our Schism, set our droplets, end phase, search Fleur de Lis. And we've got White Knight plus Fleur de Lis. We've got the Schism. If we need to use Schism, we're going to have to use droplets to send White Knight to the graveyard. But still, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 forms of disruption. They've got to clear the board. Maximus staying on board is just super impactful because you just dump Intis, you dump other extenders, and you keep going from there. And so we've got a ton of disruption. We've got a Floodgate, and then if they can't clear the board, all of our monsters in attack mode is game, because this is 3,000, 2,000, 2,000, 1,000, so 8,000 exactly. And so we'd have an Intis pop from Maximus. If we end up summoning Winda, Winda can ran into something. So that is a pretty good hand. But alright guys, that's pretty much it for this Dogmatika test hand video. I hope it gave you guys some insight into how the deck plays, but I also hope it didn't make you think that this is like some Winda turbo deck. Because while it can be, it doesn't have to be. Like, you could cut Winda and this deck is still good. Just White Knight alone makes this deck strong just due to its own ability. Also the fact that you're searching floor as well. it's just a generally good deck. And so I hope this encourages some of you guys to give it a shot. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know in the comment section below. If I made any sort of misplay or ruling mistake or something, definitely put me on blast in the comment section. Roast me for it. I'm all for that. But if you guys like the video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.